So when my kids are with me, they're stuck to me like glue. They whine that I am too busy to hang out and play with them, and they slow down all of my work. So I send them away to play. But then they fight like cats and dogs, non-stop. Why can't they get along? Hi, Christy here with Mom's Fine Truth. And if you have multiple children, I'm guessing before having them, or maybe when they were infants or toddlers, you envisioned them growing up and being lifelong best buddies. Just really built-in best friends. Am I right? If I could take another guess, I would say that they love each other. But it is difficult to get them to like each other for more than 20 seconds straight. But what we need to understand is that there's two perspectives at play here. And we often just see ours, which is the adult perspective, the perspective that can look back on childhood and see it with a bit more reality. The more logical perspective most of the time, but still it's only one perspective of the two we're engaging with here. So the adult perspective can look back at the trivial things that's making our children fight and say, this thing that you're squabbling over is nothing. It's nothing. Just let it go and move on and be best friends. But that is just our perspective. And we need to keep our children's perspective in mind as we engage them, or else we will lose connection with them. So what is the child's perspective? Well, I'm not claiming to be a child, so I cannot guarantee 100% of what's going through their head. But as I've interacted with my children and tried to remember some of what I was encountering at that time, this is kind of what I've pieced together. And it's really helped me to understand the scenario and how to encourage them in the right direction. And one of the biggest players here, I believe, is the competition aspect. Now, as much as we know that we equally love all of our children and want to spend time equally with all of them and want all of them to feel equally special, there is this yearning in our children to have time with mommy, to be the center of attention to mommy in this moment, to experience everything with mommy. And if I did not experience it with mommy, to have mommy's undivided attention as I convey the experience to her. In fact, even if she did experience it with me, I would still like to convey it again. And that's great. And I love that. But we can only give undivided attention to one child at a time. So because we are busy, life is busy, depending on how many kids you have, that's a lot of one-on-one times to work into the day. Sometimes the day flies by and the one-on-ones didn't happen. It is very easy within a child to develop a sense of competition as to when can I grab my one-on-one. And all of the kids are vying for that mommy time. And there can be a lot of push and pull and competition to see who can get it now. And I'm not saying that's healthy or unhealthy. I'm saying that's a fact of life. And I think the best way to combat that is to make sure we are very generous with our time whenever humanly possible, and that we are working in one-on-one time as much as possible every single day, so that if they do feel that sense of security that they are going to get their mommy one-on-one time, it can help calm down the competition just a little bit. But then I think the other aspect of this perspective is that there is pretty much no one else that they're going to feel more comfortable with than their siblings. There's no one that they know more weaknesses of. Not only do they know each other's weaknesses, but they know each other's buttons. And there's some pull toward pushing your siblings' buttons. But when you know everyone's weaknesses and you know everyone's buttons and you have this innate desire to push everyone's buttons and you have this dominating sense of competition, it can be very easy to view your siblings as just that, as competition. I don't want to say the enemy, but the opposition, we'll say, instead of a team player, instead of a team member, a best friend, a buddy. And I think with sin nature and with all the aspects that we just mentioned, I think that's the natural way of things. That unless they are redirected, that's the way they're going to go. So we need to recognize that, accept it as what it is, and redirect. So question is, how do we redirect? Well, I have 3 tips today that I'd like to give you in order to help get you on that track. So tip number 1 is to define obedience. Now this sounds odd because we're talking about sibling relationships and I'm not talking about siblings obeying each other. So why obedience? Well, you are going to be redirecting them, and in order for them to listen to you and follow your leading and your direction, they need to respect your authority and they need to understand what it means to truly obey. So the definition I suggest for obedience in your home is to obey now, and to obey with joy. Which means that if you do not obey, or you obey when you feel like it, or later, or you obey but in a very grumpy fashion, you are disobeying. It's all one and the same. It's all disobeying. And disobedience needs consequences. Just like we see throughout Scripture, disobedience to Christ brings on consequences. And the way they learn that is disobedience to mommy and daddy brings on consequences. And once they learn to respect the authority of mommy and daddy, and they'll learn to truly obey mommy and daddy, that will set them up for success in respecting and obeying the authority of Christ. Also, that will help you in redirecting them. And then kind of step 1B is to communicate that definition to your kids. So I'm not saying you have to follow my definition. It's what I strongly suggest. But if you have another one on your heart that you and your husband talk about and agree upon, then whatever definition you land on, communicate that to your kids at whatever level they can understand it. And it will be continuously communicated again and again and again as you go throughout life. Really spend the time to make sure your child is understanding what obedience truly means, so that they're not confused as to why there's consequences. They are fully understanding that this is what I'm supposed to do, but this is what I'm choosing to do. And once they see that differentiation, you can see that they are understanding that differentiation. That is when consequences come into play. All right, tip number 2 is to give them opportunities to practice the relationship. Now, this can be a bit brutal at first because what I am suggesting, what the biggest turning point for my kids, I thought my kids had a pretty good relationship. And then I put them in the same bedroom and we had a video monitor in there. And I told them every afternoon they would have some quiet playtime while I got some work done. And then each morning they would have about an hour of playtime in their room between the times that I let them get out of bed and I let them come out of their room. So they'd have time that they were awake but not able to come out of their room yet, and they would play. It was fine when they were in separate rooms. They just kind of learned independent play by themselves. But when we combined rooms, we weren't just doing the independent play, we were doing relationship building. and I discovered a host of weaknesses in my children's relationship and communication habits and everything. And it was almost enough to get me to separate them back up again. But then I realized, no, this weakness was already there. This is just exposing me to it. So unless I want this weakness to remain, I need to not shy away from it. I need to use it as a training opportunity. And in those moments when our kids are struggling, we need to stop seeing them as frustration and start seeing them as an opportunity for us to train and them to grow and their relationship to grow. So there might be another situation that is already popping in your mind that you're like, yeah, every time my kids get in this situation, cats and dogs. Well, that might be your starting point. But I'm telling you, there is a power to closing that door and letting them have alone playtime in a room with a shut door where mommy isn't there. And the funny thing about it is that they both knew that there was a video monitor in there. And in fact, if they needed me, like injured or something like that, they would come to the video monitor and talk to me and I would respond. So they knew it, but I don't know if they just forgot about it while they were playing or they're just like out of sight, out of mind, I don't care. Something would switch as soon as they went in that room and I shut the door. Video monitor or no video monitor. And the reason I'm stressing video monitor is you will gain nothing by putting them in a room and shutting the door and just letting them go at it. All they're going to learn from that is bad habits of communication and interaction. So what you want, that video monitor is going to be a pain for a little bit. I'm just saying. But it's going to be so worth it. And it's going to be your opportunity to exercise tip number 3, which is consistency. So tip number 1 is to define and communicate the definition of obedience. Tip number 2 is to give them the opportunities, as painful as they may be. And tip number 3 is to be consistent. Now this is 2-pronged as well. First is consistent in enforcing. So first is consistent in your interaction. So when they're first starting off, their alone time, you don't have to make it an hour. You can make it 5 minutes if you need to start small and they need you to start small. That might be what that looks like. But you're going to have that video monitor in that room and you're going to hold the other half in your hand and you're just going to watch and you're going to listen. And as soon as things start going south, you're going to interrupt. Either there's a little microphone thing on the video monitor, or you can be sitting outside the room and just go into the room. Because they already, if they are walking and talking and arguing and fighting, they have already developed some bad habits. And so right now you're pushing against those bad habits. You're redirecting. And that push to redirect is hard for a little bit. And you just need to walk into it with that expectation that it needs to be consistent. Just like any new habit, if you only enforce the habit half the time, it's going to take over twice as long. In order to make that transition quicker and easier for everyone involved, the more consistency you need to give it. So it's consistency in your interaction, but also consistency in your explanations. So it's not just supposed to be a list of rules. Especially as your kids get older, you want it to be a consistency in the why, so that they will not just be obeying a list of communication etiquette rules. They will be understanding the why, and that is, it's the difference between giving a child a fish and teaching them to fish. There are going to be so many types of interactions that they're going to have as they grow that you're not going to be able to give them a specific rule for every single interaction. But if they understand the whys behind these rules, then they'll be able to apply that to all the situations. So one of the best ways that I have learned to do that is because another part of that competition is they are automatic squealers, tattletalers, whatever you want to call it, trying to get their sibling in trouble. And even from the youngest ages, there's this like sense of satisfaction knowing they got their sibling in trouble. It's pretty brutal. But it's sin nature here. It's Satan at his finest, and we need to just recognize it and redirect it. And so I will often, especially as they get like the 5, 6, 7 range, I'll spend more time sitting down with them consistently as they are tattling on their sibling, as they are attempting to get them in trouble, really trying to push to get consequences to occur. I will stop and spend time consistently, again, redirection consistently, just talking them through, do you love your sibling? Well, yeah. Okay. Do you want to see them in pain or in sadness, feeling sadness? No. So why are you trying to get them in trouble? And when they really logically think through that, like in the moment, a lot of times it's they have the toy that I want and I'm aggravating them because I want it. So they hit me and I still want that toy and I don't like that they hit me. So I want to get them in trouble. But if they, apart from that situation, if they're actually sitting down thinking, do I want my sibling to feel sad or hurt? No. And so redirecting to say what you want is for them not to hit or not to snatch or not to be mean. And the best way to help them do that is to lovingly remind them of what you know to be right. So if one sibling is trying to snatch from another one, teaching that sibling who has the toy, instead of saying, Mom, so-and-so is snatching from me, can you address that? Say, so-and-so, remember, I had the toy first. Don't snatch it. And so the rule, now, are there times where so-and-so is still going to snatch it because they don't care? Yes. But the rule that we've established in our home is that if someone is doing something wrong, you lovingly remind them. And if they don't listen, then you lovingly come and tell mommy. If there is someone snatching or whatever, and first person who's getting snatched from is ugly in how they respond, they will also get in trouble. So the snatcher will get in trouble, but the one who was not being a team player and not trying to help their sibling will also get in trouble. And so again, we see the natural bend of things, that it's competition. It's wanting to push buttons. It's wanting to get in trouble. We don't want to get the other one in trouble. It is Satan at his finest. And that's what comes naturally. So again, it's not a matter of just teaching a bunch of rules. It is a matter of teaching them a new way of thinking. This, I know you don't see it at this moment, but this is your best friend. This is someone you should help obey. You should help be more like Christ. You should not try to hurt. You should not drag down. You should not push against. We are all family. We are all friends. We are all each other's best buddies. We should all be working towards becoming more like Jesus and helping each other become more like Jesus. And honestly, when they reach a like 6, 7, 8 range, I get right there in it and I say, ultimately, our number one job is to help each other learn to follow Christ. Because bottom line, this life right here, right now, is but the blink of an eye and then it's over. So what really matters, if we love each other, what really matters is that we spend an eternity together. And when we talk through what heaven and hell is, and just how mind-boggling and heartbreakingly sad it would be if one of us was not with the others for all of eternity. I'm literally getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. Anything that there's squabbling over, or that I'm grumpy about, or that are getting in the way of any of our relationships means nothing in comparison. And so when we start to see each other as we're on the same team, helping each other become like Christ, which right now in childhood means helping each other obey mommy and daddy with joy. Now, it changes everything. Now, the automatic habits are going to come right back in, which is why consistency is key. It's daily redirecting to the truth, redirecting to the truth, redirecting to the truth. And over time, it's less and less and less. It becomes a habit. It becomes their new perspective. It becomes a part of their heart. And that is the breeding ground for amazing sibling relationships. Now, the main resource I can give you to further build on a lot more detailed level of those 3 tips is the Overwhelmed Mommy Club. It is linked, and it is a 10-module course that includes a lot more than parent-child and child-child relationships, but that is the first couple modules focus on that because that is the breeding ground for a successful home. And so the Overall Mommy Club covers all of that, but also covers organizing, decluttering your home, automating all the tasks in your home, and ultimately teaching your kids to become independent team players in your home, taking so much overwhelm and stress off of mommy. So if that sounds interesting, check out the link below. Also, next video for you to watch is why children need to entertain themselves. And I touched a little bit on the fact that that is a suggestion that I give as a opportunity to teach them good relationships. But there's so much more benefit to self-entertainment and playing by themselves or playing without an adult than just teaching good communication. And that video dives into that in greater detail. So it should be popping up here. All right, that's all I've got for you today. But remember, I'm always here if you need me. Bye.